to give a precursor by saying that this presentation is being recorded, and that's only for the purposes of letting other people who weren't able to make this time be able to watch the webinar later. So if you don't feel comfortable showing your face, that's totally fine. Just press the stop video button on the bottom. But if you do feel comfortable, I think it really makes these webinars a little bit better because you get to see that sense of community by looking at everyone's faces. The last thing I want to preface is if you all could please just mute your microphones unless you'd like to chime in on something. That'll just prevent more background noise and it'll be a little bit less distracting. And if you're not sure how to do that, look at the bottom, hover your mouse at the bottom of your screen and a little microphone like signal thing should come up. You can press that and unmute it at any time. There's also a chat bar that please feel free to utilize. That again is a little chat bubble icon, and you can feel free to type away in there questions that will be addressed at the end of this presentation or comments during it. So I'm going to share my screen so y'all can see the presentation. And if somebody could just let me know what it looks like. How do I start this? Present, okay. So I'm not gonna be able to see your faces during this. So someone let me know if it looks good.
We can see your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much. So tonight is one of many of our, we've had dozens by now of these webinars that are hosted by the National Volunteer Programs at the Humane League. And these are meant to give back to volunteers because volunteers do so much, provide so much energy, talent, and time to making the Humane League successful. This is something that was developed in order to try to give back in terms of free resources, free knowledge, and we invite experts on the call, so you're welcome to join this lecture series. Some of our webinars are more interactive, and we actually have hosted virtual work parties, which are as a space for you to come and actually do actions together, like writing letters, doing online actions, and more to help our campaigns. And I'm just going to say, for any newcomers, if you don't mind just muting your microphones to prevent some background noise, I think that would be awesome if you don't mind doing that. Okay, so tonight is a special webinar, and I'm really excited to present on this because it's one of the most basic topics. It's called So You Want to Be an Animal Activist, or you already are but want to get better at it. And that is meant to let everyone know that this was originally created for anyone who wants to get into animal activism. Maybe you want to start volunteering. Maybe you've decided that you want to make this your career choice. Or maybe you've been doing animal activism for 20, 30 years, but you just want to have a refresher, or you want to reevaluate what you're doing. It's for everybody. And I hope that you'll at least walk away with a nice reminder or some new information that'll guide you to be the best and most effective animal activist you can, because animals are counting on it. So, forgot I did that. So this presentation is going to be short and sweet. I have a bad attention span, so I try to be aware of other people's attention spans. And we're going to cover 4 basics that I've come up with that I think are great stepping stones. So get educated, get active, stay positive, and be consistent. And not only are these the 4 basic steps for being the best advocate you can be, but they're also meant to be utilized in chronological order. So first, you get educated. And I'm going to break it down into categories. So ways that you can get educated. And this is an important first step, because you might have watched one documentary and now you have the passion for changing the world in this way. Maybe you want to be an animal advocate because of how upsetting what you saw was. But before you jump into things, I really think it's valuable to educate yourself as much as you can in both the animal agriculture's argument about why they do what they do, and also get a good, well-rounded perspective on this animal rights revolution. That's going to make you, I guess the end goal in my mind is to be kind of an encyclopedia on animal agriculture, veganism, and activism. That way you're able to engage with more people, you're able to have more complicated conversations, and it'll give you just a better idea of where you're needed most. So books are one of the best ways, of course, and there's a lot of amazing literature out there that really helps shape activists and has helped shape the leaders in our animal rights movement. These are 5 books that I personally recommend reading, and I think that they all have a different purpose. They have different perspectives, and I think if you read all of these books, you'd be better off as an animal activist than you would if you didn't read them. That being said, this is not, like, I wouldn't say that these are the only ones. Like, there's so many different books that you should read. And if you asked any animal activist who's been in this movement for a little bit, I'm sure they'd give you a slightly different answer. And I will go back to this at the end of the presentation if you want to take a picture of it or something. I'm so sorry. I should go back and just give a really quick preface about what all of these books are about. Peter Singer's Animal Liberation is considered one of the first and kind of like the Bible of utilitarianism within animal rights and animal welfare. Peter Singer also wrote Ethics into Action, and it's kind of the next step I kind of consider it after animal liberation, and it's just talking about putting your ethics into action and actually becoming an activist. The Animal Activist Handbook is really short and really easy to read. So if you are not the best reader, I would definitely just pick up the Animal Activist Handbook. It's really fast. You can read it in an afternoon. And it really outlines some great just basics for everyday life as an animal activist. Every 12 Seconds is written by an undercover investigator who actually worked in a slaughterhouse, and he really talks about the psychological structure that the animal agriculture industry created. That really, it's just all about the distance from us and our food, and it really even goes into the distance from slaughter workers in a slaughterhouse from the fact that they're actually killing. So there's also probably podcasts on this. This man has spoken and does a lecture as well. You could probably watch. And then How to Win Friends and Influence People. This is just about basic psychology about how to be charismatic, attract people, and influence people through your speech and your interactions and your relationships. Okay, so these are some recommended documentaries. This is for if you're just starting out, if you've just discovered animal activism or factory farming. This is a really great list of 4 different documentaries that I highly suggest watching. You'll get a well-rounded view of the different facets of veganism and animal rights. Okay, and then something you can do that is going to be more on your own and self-guided is exploring different organizations' websites and philosophies. So I recommend doing this because when you start out doing activism, you usually start with one organization, and I think it's important to find the organization that aligns best with your ideologies, and you're not going to know until you start reading more about their mission statement, what kind of tactics they spend their time and resources in. Resources are very precious in the nonprofit world, so it really is very telling. Attending webinars, conferences, lectures, and listening to podcasts. I just grouped this for the sake of brevity, but these are all really fantastic things to do to get another well-rounded perspective, into this movement. So the Animal Rights Conference is coming up this summer. It's going to be in LA, so if you're on the West Coast or if you are able to travel out there, this is one of the best ways to immerse yourself in this movement. I know the first time I went to Animal Rights Conference, I literally cried because I couldn't believe how many other people were on the same page as me and cared about animals as deeply as I felt I did. So it not only makes a sense of like being a part of a community, but you also have the chance just to talk with so many different amazing organizations and hear a lot of experienced folks talk as well. There's some great podcasts out there. And again, this is something that every activist would probably give you a different list, but Colleen Patrick Goudreau, I think, is really captivating in the way she speaks. And she has a couple different podcasts you can listen to, as well as Our Hen House. The Our Hen House has a lot of prominent figures in the animal rights movement on to interview as well. And then attending lectures or watching lectures if they've been recorded, I think is a fantastic thing to do if you have some time and patience. I have a picture of Dr. Greger giving one of his lectures here. He's really opened my mind to the world of nutrition and health within veganism and helped me form my arguments when I need to talk about it with others as well. Okay. So we've come to the end of the first segment, which is getting educated. I'd love to have Kelsey please share your thoughts or experiences on getting educated as an animal activist.
Sure. So I think there's many different ways, like Rachel said, that you can do this. And if you talk to a variety of activists, they're going to give you a variety of answers. So this is just my personal experience and what I thought was helpful for me. So I read about industry standards for each animal so that I could personally understand and explain these practices to other people. And a lot of this information can be easily found online. Most of us have already been exposed to a lot of this, and that's why we're here today. And then Compassion in World Farming has briefings on each food system. And I found this really helpful because it explains it in a non-emotional way. And so it's easy to understand the facts of animal agriculture and to be able to convey those to others. I also try to watch popular documentaries as they come out so that I'm in the loop, but also so that I can give people easy access to materials if they're interested in learning more. So some of my favorites have been, just to reiterate what Rachel said, Cowspiracy and What the Health. I really thought Blackfish was powerful. And then there's a new series on Netflix that isn't specifically focused on animal agriculture, but more so our food system as a whole. And there is one episode on chicken farming, and it's called Netflix. So if you haven't seen that, I encourage you to check that out. I follow many animal groups on Facebook so that I can stay up to date on articles. So, obviously I follow the Humane League and other groups. I follow Veg News, and then more mainstream accounts such as the New York Times. And once Facebook figures out what you're interested in and the algorithms, they will feed you animal type articles. And then when animal activists are speaking in town or giving lectures, I love to go to those and learn from them. And if they've published a book, I always try to read that first. And then, like Rachel said, books, right? So some of my favorites include Mercy for Animals, Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer, which is more of a fiction type book, but I found really helpful in relating to people. And then How Successful People Lead. And then my personal favorite way to learn about animal agriculture is connecting with local activists in my community and learning from them. Because a lot of times they're most plugged into what's going on in your local community, and they know people on a larger scale as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kelsey, for sharing. I really appreciate your insight. Okay, so moving on to the next point is getting active. So you can educate yourself a lot, but it's never going to be the same as experience. So experience is the best teacher. I'm sorry, that's so cliche, but it's so true. And I want to reiterate that this is a seriously urgent issue. Animals need us now, so it's important to not wait until we're totally experts in all of these different things. If you don't know something, that's okay. You can learn through experience. So please, I'm really going to drill at home that this is an urgent issue and our lives are very, very short. So making the time to do something and to volunteer your time or pursue a career in this is very important. So I think it's best to educate yourself in the middle of actually being active. You can't read it in a book. You can't read it in a book. Sorry about that. So you can continue to educate yourself simultaneously while you're getting experience like this. So I think it's important to try a variety of activism. We have just 4 of very many examples. We have leafleting, online campaign actions, writing letters to the editor or postcards, attending a protest. Now, the reason behind why I think you should try a variety of activism is because you're not necessarily going to love every single type of activism, right? So letting yourself see that there is many different ways that you can give your time is going to make you a more well-rounded activist. So it's going to give you the experience of trying things, and it's going to be able to make sure you find your niche. Okay. And to get started trying things that maybe you've never done, you need to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. While not every form of activism is right for everyone long-term, it's important that we try things we wouldn't normally be comfortable with. And that's because, remember, most of the time we're not getting involved in animal advocacy just because of how naturally fun it is. We're doing it because we realize that it's something we want to dedicate our time to and that we want to help solve a problem. So this is necessary because if we don't fight and if we don't try things that we're uncomfortable at first, who will? We're a very small group of people that care about this issue. So it's important. And I don't mean to torture yourself trying. If I'm just saying try something. If you don't like it, you don't have to do it again. But I think it's really important to at least try. So Kelsey, I would like to hand the mic to you again if you'd like to share about your experience.
Yeah, sure. I would love to. So I feel like I was never really ready to just jump into activism. I wanted to so badly after, watching what I had watched and, reading all of the things that I had read. But I didn't really know where to begin. So I started with different types like leafleting and online action. And online actions were definitely the easiest, right? Because I was behind a computer screen, but it just didn't feel like I was doing enough. And so one particular instance stands out most in my mind. I had a friend reach out and she asked me to start mentoring new vegans and people who wanted to reduce their meat consumption. And I was terrified that I was going to say the wrong thing or not be convincing enough, which I think a lot of us struggle with, right? Like we love animals so much and we realize how badly they suffer. And so we want to be spot on every time. But what I learned though was I went ahead and did it anyways. I jumped in and I was like, this is terrifying and I don't know if I'm going to be any good at it. And what I learned was just to be myself and use the knowledge and the skills that I already had. So I relied on being kind and understanding, which we all are, and admitting if I didn't know the answer. So if someone asked me a question, when I was, leafleting or maybe mentoring, I just admitted that I didn't know the right answer. And that makes it really human for people. And then you just say, I'm going to go ahead and look into that. And I just asked a lot of questions and I modeled my behavior off of other, activists that I trusted. So, going along with that, I think it was incredibly helpful for me to make volunteering and activism a part of my regular routine because it made me comfortable talking to people about veganism and it made activism, instead of being scary, it made it fun. And I think it's important to note too that there's still some instances where I get nervous when doing outreach, whether that be leafleting or mentoring or tabling events, but I just try to power through and remember that it's worth doing it for the animals and that they would want me to continue.
Thank you so much again. I think your dogs are happy that you're such a good activist. No, it wasn't loud. I wasn't trying to say that. It's just cute. Okay, let me get back to this. All right, so we're on to the 3rd out of 4 points. And this one is to stay positive. And it seems obvious or, okay, what else is there to say about this? But this is actually, I think, one of the most important things that you can possibly do as an animal rights activist. This is because we're dealing with a super negative issue. We're dealing with one of the most tragic and horrific things on earth, in my opinion. So staying positive is incredibly difficult at times, but it's also the thing that is the driving force behind so many successful organizations. So I want to talk a little bit about my personal experience in staying positive. I've grown to learn that what I can take and what I have grown to learn what I can take as an activist and what will drive me to burnout. And although I admire those who participate in vigils and pig save events, I do not attend these. And I hope you're not hating me right now, because I'm just being honest. I do not attend these, and it's on purpose. I know that this would quickly drain my emotional strength, and I would not be as effective in my activism because of it. So instead, I choose to spend my time fighting for animals in a different way. I spend my time spreading awareness to the public and organizing volunteers to host events and veganize their communities. This is where I thrive, and this is where I feel I can be of the most change. And it took me a while to find my niche. It took me a while to figure out that this is where I am most effective and where I think that I can make the most out of my short time on Earth. So instead of going to vigils, I wish I could. I wish I could do things like that, and I wish I could be an undercover investigator, because I just admire those people more than words can describe. But I know that I'm too emotionally fragile for those things, and I'm better at other forms of activism. So if you go about this work in the wrong way, without thinking deeply about these things and without considering what's best for you, you do risk burning out and becoming too disillusioned to continue fighting. Animals need our dedication, and that means us working smarter, not harder. So positivity and compassion are the keys to success. So that's like a twofold here. Positivity and keeping a positive outlook and not letting yourself dwell in the negatives for too long doesn't mean ignoring them or pretending they don't exist. It just means trying to continue to have a positive attitude when possible. And then compassion, treating your fellow vegans with compassion, treating other people who disagree with you with compassion, even treating people who still eat animals with compassion, because most of us here on this call used to be that same way. So the issue that we are fighting is already pretty gruesome, as I mentioned. It's negative, it's the opposite of compassionate. So we don't need to add to it. There's plenty of it already. Anger, frustration, and sadness are normal emotions to experience when doing activism for farmed animals. And I'm not suggesting you ignore these emotions or bottle them up, but rather don't let them dictate your behavior. Don't let them dictate your interactions or your decision-making. So it's better to find a way that works for you to express them and let them out, but use positivity, kindness, and patience when it comes to your activism. So for me, I know that I need to take some time off. It seems logically that if I work 24/7 around the clock or whenever I was awake working for animals, I would probably get more done. However, that would last a really short time, because we're just not designed to continue doing that. So taking time off, spending time doing things that you love. For me, I like to paint. So it helps me get my emotions out onto a canvas. I feel good. It's just for me. And that's a way that I can try to balance my life. And then I can come back to this work being way more effective and efficient. Okay, sorry. I'd like to hand it off to Kelsey, and then we'll move on to our fourth point.
Sure. So I'll share some specifics of how I keep a positive attitude, which, like Rachel said, I know that it can be emotionally draining to know of all of the cruelty that occurs and to understand the intersectionality between animal agriculture and so many other issues. So once we start learning about factory farming, oftentimes we learn of all of these other issues in the world, and it can sometimes feel too heavy to handle. So self-care is crucial to not only, not getting burnt out, but also to be the best advocate for animals. We have to be joyful, and we have to have energy to do so, right? And this was really hard for me to understand when I first became involved in the animal rights movement. And I wanted to do everything that I could during every minute of the day. But obviously that's just not possible, and it took its toll. So I set some ground rules for myself, and they helped me to be better rested and happier and more effective for animals. So I'll share some of the things that I do regularly, but this would look different to each of you depending on what your interests are. So for me, I never read animal agriculture materials in bed. So if I'm currently reading an animal rights book, I do that elsewhere in my home or at a coffee shop or maybe while I'm traveling. And I let my bedroom be my haven and my cozy place. So I only try to read fictional books before bed and not let those things get to me before bed. I regularly try to do activities that I enjoy outside of animal activism, such as hiking or kayaking, or taking my dogs to do something fun, which you all heard them during the last section. And if I feel myself getting really stressed out, I allow myself a break, whether that be a small walk outside, or maybe it's a week break where I need to not think about anything other than myself and those around me. And then, sometimes I'll splurge on something that I really love doing, like getting my nails done, maybe indulging in a guilty pleasure. And then lastly, I try to have positive relationships with those around me. So, it's really hard for us. It's really easy for us, to want to blame others around us. And it can be hard to see past their food and lifestyle choices. And for me, it's important to remind myself that I haven't always been vegan and that I appreciate others kindly informing me before I was. So I try to remember that, educating people about veganism is a numbers game, right? So instead of getting mad that mom or dad won't go vegan, I still love them just the same. And I focus on, other people that I'm able to reach in the community. And it's just not worth having a strained relationship with those people. And so all in all, I think, trying to remain a joyful vegan is incredibly important for ourselves and those around us. So I guess to sum that up, I shelter myself from harsh information before bed, or in places that I consider like my cozy spots in my home. And, although I regularly engage in animal activism, I do activities outside of it too. And then I continue to love and hang out with those around me, even if they aren't vegan.
Thank you again. Those are some great reminders. Okay, so we're almost through the presentation, and then I'd love to open the floor up to everyone else. So my last point tonight is to be consistent. So now that you've educated yourself, you're getting active, you're trying new experiences, and you're trying to stay positive throughout it all, being consistent is the last point, and I think it's something to try to keep in mind, especially if you're doing this as a volunteer. So there's ways that you can prevent frustration. If you're sick of starting over, or if you're sick of jumping into animal activism again after a while of not doing it, don't give up in the first place. So that doesn't mean you have to do animal activism every day. Just making sure that you are making it a priority in some capacity, and you're scheduling regular volunteer events for yourself. It's a lot easier to build skills, network with other folks, especially if you're looking for a career, and build your confidence as an activist if you stay consistently involved. So making it a priority to volunteer for animals. And the reason I have a picture of a train up here is because I love analogies and metaphors. I'm like really nerdy in that way. So whenever I can make an analogy, I like to, because it's visual and helps me understand. So being consistent in animal activism is kind of like you're starting a train up. You're just jumping into this new world of animal activism. And it takes a really long time for the train to get up to speed. You hear it grinding and squeaking and trying to go. But once you start getting up to that speed, it's a lot easier to keep going. And it's way easier to continue going than it was just starting in the beginning. But every time you stop or you let too much time go by, psychologically, it's like starting that train all the way over again. So even if you're going at a really slow pace, it's better than starting from scratch when you can prevent it. And so because doing animal activism isn't most people's full-time job, it can be tough to make time for it. And I really deeply understand that, because I was a volunteer for a long time before I got a job doing it. So I was in school, at college, I had a job, and I wanted to volunteer. And the way I did that was by scheduling time on my calendar and making it a priority. My suggestion is to schedule time to volunteer and stick to it. So most animal advocacy organizations rely on their volunteers and achieve victories, and win their campaigns even. So without scheduled or regular volunteer events, it can be really easy to let too much time pass between getting active for animals. So that being said, find something you enjoy and do it a lot. That's how you can make it not a chore. Sorry, I have some notes here that I'm trying to pull up. So I'm just going to read this. If you find yourself dreading volunteering or finding reasons to not accept an invitation, maybe that's on Facebook or maybe it's one of my a million emails to go leafleting, maybe it's just not the right kind of activism for you. So try various different actions and do what you can. But the most important thing is to do something. So this goes back to the fact that this is a really urgent issue, and that slide that shows how many animals are dying as we speak. And that's really grim, I know, but it's the reality of this world. So try to find something you enjoy doing. Try a bunch of things until you find something. I guarantee there's something out there for you. And meet like-minded people. So humans are social beings, and we're still the minority, unfortunately, in the way that we, in the fact that we're vegan or animal activists. So meeting like-minded people is something that will keep you active if you surround yourself by active vegans, and it'll keep you sane. You know, it'll keep you it'll keep you remembering that you're not the only one in this fight. And hopefully you'll be surrounded by compassion and understanding, because most animal advocates are very compassionate people. These are some folks at the gala. This was at the Philadelphia Humane League Gala. So attending social events like that. Attending protests is another way to hang out with other volunteers or activists. And then going to farm sanctuaries is a great thing as well. Trying to get a group of some people going is a way to see the animals that are living happy lives. So I'd like to hand it over to Kelsey one last time before we open it up to discussion.
Those are all really amazing things to do. And that's kind of exactly what I did before I started working for the Humane League. So I think, making animal activism a routine was really important for me for a couple of reasons. One, it made me feel more hopeful about the future for animals, and it took some of that sorrow away. And it also became less scary to partake in activism opportunities. So I liked regularly doing them so that I wasn't so nervous when I did do them. And then I just chose to do things regularly that I knew I could fit into, my work schedule and my school schedule. So, I regularly would give humane education presentations. So if this is something that, if you're really outgoing and you're interested in doing something like that, you could look into that. I, donated my time to do design work for local animal organizations. And then I would regularly volunteer at an animal sanctuary, and I would take people out there to meet the animals, and then use that as an opportunity to, take them to lunch somewhere afterwards and eat a vegan meal and maybe talk about the connection that they had with those animals. And this was in addition to, leafleting and online actions. So activism can look a lot of different ways. And you can do, whatever is most beneficial to you at, a particular time in your life. And I think that's really important to keep in mind.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And the last thing I want to mention is, beyond volunteering, consider a career in animal activism. Even if you don't, I've heard from a lot of people that say, I don't think I'm qualified. I don't have the experience, or I don't have, this or that. But animal activism is something that is really, we need people to dedicate their lives full time to this. So if you do have an interest in this, I highly suggest everyone on this call consider it, or at least, ponder if it's something at some point in your life you'd be interested in doing. There's a lot of job openings. Okay, so let me stop sharing my screen. Cool. So I would love to open the floor up to questions, comments, concerns, or anything else you'd like to add. And feel free to just unmute yourself, or if you're not comfortable, just write it in the chat bar. Thank you so much.
Kelsey, you said you did design work for animal organizations. Did you say that? What do you do?
I'm sorry, you cut out during that last part. What was that?
What did you do for design work for animal organizations?
Yeah, so there were some local organizations in where I was from. And so I offered my graphic design services to them for free. And there's also a great group, I think they're called HeartSpeak, like HEART, ART all capitalized. And they are a network of photographers and designers that offer their services for free to animal organizations.
Because I'm an interior design major, and I've had some struggle thinking of what I can sort of do with that. I have considered graphic design, but I'm also in a graphic design class right now, and I'm not doing well. And I hope I can get better.
I would say if you could do that down the road, that would be awesome. But even just the fact